Well, there's a period in my life when I was trying to write standards. It was kind of shitty singing. I really didn't have it figured out. It's a rough business.
All ears are on Cher's voice. But now she's bringing up an utterly surprising subject, Leon Russell. What did pop's reigning queen think of one of rock's most enigmatic and consequential figures? You won't expect the answer. You should not miss this interview. All right then, let's dive in. But first, let's take a look at Leon Russell's background and musical career before we see what Cher has to say about him. As Claude Russell Bridges, Leon Russell came into this world on April 2, 1942. Even before he stepped foot on Earth, he faced obstacles. John and Hester Bridges had 2 sons. Claude was the second. According to his mother, he was mute until he was in his late teens, and the most astonishing thing was that his first words were anything from simple. "What's wrong? You're crying," he said, his eyes fixed on other birds in the distance. Having never heard her kid talk before, his mother gazed in awe. However, the late speech was not the only thing that set young Claude apart. He was born with a kind of cerebral palsy due to an accident that injured the second and third vertebrae in his spine. He felt pain on his right side, particularly in his hand. He had to depend on his left hand since 3 of his right fingers weren't functioning properly. Unforeseen ways were shaped by such constraint in his destiny. Claude would later admit, "My chops have always been weak." Despite this, the injury inspired him to develop his own distinctive style of piano playing. He lacked the physical power to imitate others' techniques, but he ultimately succeeded in making music that was uniquely his. It was impossible to deny Claude's devotion to music. Even though both of his parents were upright piano players, he shocked his mother when he was 4 years old by playing the church hymn, "Trust and Obey," by ear. Despite the almost 38-mile trek, he was soon enrolled in piano lessons in a neighboring town. Beyond this, his abilities extended beyond the piano. His command of the alto, cornet, and baritone horns was rapid. He joined the high school marching band after impressing the band director in 5th grade. He seemed to have an innate talent for music even as a little boy. However, not every desire is easily realized. After over a decade of study, Claude conceded that classical music was too hard for his hands to perform honestly. A more appropriate approach would have been for him to come up with novel techniques to mimic the classical style. When he was angry with his body, music helped him forget about it. Even though he said, "I felt like the world had cheated me," he was aware that music had offered him release. But without the constraints, he could have been no more than any other small-town insurance salesman featuring an ex-football star. When Claude was a teenager, music had taken over his life. With fellow student and buddy David Gates, he recorded his first single when he was 15 years old. Even if Tulsa was still his home, he had his sights set on a life beyond it, and the song "Joe Baby" marked the beginning of something grander. As a result, he performed underage with his band the Starlighters at local bars, by posing as Leon Russell and using a false ID to get in. Even if he performed in more dark halls, night after night, the moniker would remain. There was no downtime between working all night and attending classes throughout the day. "I slept in English a lot," he said, "but the music really made up for the weariness." There was an urgent need to hit the road after graduating from high school. Leon dropped out of college when Jerry Lee Lewis asked him to join him on tour. "There was no choice. I figured this was my chance to eat in a lot of restaurants and travel around," stated the man. Even while he had experienced adversity in this world, he had also found an escape via music. But things weren't simple when he got to Los Angeles. Fewer venues could host performances due to the tighter liquor regulations. Leon was ravenous, on the verge of starvation. Even though California wasn't the promised land of opportunity, he persisted nevertheless. In its place, he became a session musician and continued to hone his skills by taking guitar lessons from James Burton. Those years spent practicing in the studio were crucial. From Jan and Dean to Ricky Nelson, George Harrison, and Barbra Streisand, Leon performed with everyone. He seemed to be everywhere, quietly enhancing many strikes with his enchantment. Even at that young age, Leon saw that his destiny did not include a life spent in obscurity. Leon might make more than one noise. Whatever motivated him, he played anything: rock, blues, gospel, bluegrass, you name it. His music had a depth that few could equal because of the way his life's tragedy had molded it. He was able to find a way to make music out of every difficulty he faced. A sticky situation arose for Joe Cocker in March of 1970. U.S. immigration officials threatened deportation unless he promptly performed. Some have speculated that darker threats of physical violence against Cocker were the true motivation for the hurried tour. With little time to prepare for a 48-day tour, Cocker sought out Leon Russell for assistance in assembling a band. Almost difficult was the job at hand. Russell had no choice but to rush about, rehearsing musicians and holding auditions. The end product was the seminal period in rock history defined by Mad Dogs and Englishmen, a musically wild maelstrom. Recruiting a 10-piece band and recruiting 10 backup vocalists for the space choir were both assigned to Russell. Russell gained command in the middle of the mayhem. Cocker was not fit to be led because he was too impaired by the effects of the medications. Cocker was at a loss for words when Russell inquired, "Does the music sound right?" Cocker ultimately said, "It never sounds right to me," revealing her confusion. Russell decided to handle things alone. Thinking, "I'll just do whatever I want," he proceeded to do just that. Russell rounded together members of Bonnie Bramlett's band and Delaney's. He orchestrated an intense and unfiltered tour. Tour vocalist Claudia Lanier said that Russell has a unique talent. He had the ability to combine white and black gospel styles, resulting in a completely original sound. On the Mad Dogs and Englishmen performance DVD, Elton John saw something that others could have overlooked. Joe was an amazing singer, but it was Leon's band, according to him. Dressed in a top hat and a basketball jersey he found at a thrift shop, Russell understood how to put on a show. His mastery of the music was evident, and his presence bigger than life. "I'm an actor," claimed the actor. "I was just trying to make a show." Aside from his onstage activities, Russell was hard at work behind the scenes, producing his 1970 solo album, Leon Russell. The album included guest appearances by several legendary musicians, including Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, George Harrison, and Mick Jagger, among many others. There were 2 classic songs on the album, A Song for You and Delta Lady. These weren't simply songs, they were confessions put to music. This 10-minute masterpiece, A Song for You, was born from the depths of Russell's soul. It seemed to have traveled from another dimension. The speed with which it poured shocked him, he conceded. More than 40 performers, including Ray Charles and the Carpenters, would cover the tune. In fact, Ray Charles won a Grammy in 1994 for his rendition. The song had gone beyond being just Russell's composition. It had become autonomous. Conversely, Joe Cocker first performed Delta Lady on the Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour. Although the words were changed in Cocker's rendition, Russell's spirit was still there in the song, which dealt with love and yearning. With its unsaid pain, it was a smashing success. Russell was a mainstay of the 1970s music scene. Alone Together, sung by Dave Mason, included his piano work, and that same year The Letter, featuring Jarrett, was his first success. At the Fillmore East, Russell and Elton John shared the stage. Russell had clearly graduated from the role of supporting actor to that of rising star. Like the guy himself, his performances were unrehearsed, genuine, and unfiltered. At the concert for Bangladesh in 1971, George Harrison extended an invitation to Russell to perform. In Russell's professional life, it marked a turning point. He joined Harrison and Bob Dylan on bass and sang harmony while playing piano. The 1973 Grammy for CD of the Year went to the charity CD that was made from that performance, further solidifying Russell's position in music history. Performances, collaborations, and recording sessions filled the 1970s. Leon Russell's first gold album, Leon Russell and the Shelter People, was released. He dabbled in country music as Hank Wilson and collaborated with blues legend Freddie King. He never settled for playing just one kind of music. Thus, he was really a man of many disguises. Over the years, Russell accomplished much more than simply making music. Among his Oklahoma real estate holdings was the famed Church Studio, where artists such as Eric Clapton and Willie Nelson were recorded. The making of A Poem is a Naked Person was a thrilling time in Russell's career, even though he was so opposed to the documentary that he kept it out of the public eye for 4 decades. Russell had a change of heart and decided to release the picture. After that, there was Hank Wilson. Russell's country persona, Hank, came into being while driving, influenced by music played at truck stops. What started as a country music experiment became into much more. Aside from the moderate success of Russell's first single, Roll in My Sweet Baby's Arms, the 1973 album Hank Wilson's Back Volume 1 was a smashing success. It was a light-hearted break from a profession that had its share of dark patches. It wasn't only his records that Russell had an impact on the music industry. Not only was he instrumental in the development of Linn drum machines, but he also contributed to the popularity of the Gap Band. His innovations in rhythm and swing timing eventually made it into the tools that revolutionized the music industry. He had an uncanny knack for planning ahead and coming up with innovative methods to make his imprint. There were many highs and lows on Leon Russell's path in the 1980s. He was a voice in ABC's We Belong Together ad among luminaries like Aretha Franklin. The ever-shifting nature of television was reflected in this advertising song. Although he became a household name in the United States, his devotion to doing live concerts was unwavering. His livelihood became touring. He and Newgrass Revival were on the road for much of the first half of that decade. The boundaries between country and rock were dissolved by this strange yet effective partnership. Russell made his Texas debut at Joe Ely's 3rd annual Tornado Jam on May 1, 1982. The 25,000-strong audience was enthralled by his appearance, as were other acts such as Joan Jett and the Crickets. In every performance, Russell gave it his all, as if the audience's lives were on the line. That was his way, he alleged. That was the only way he knew. Even as the music business changed under him, Russell continued to release songs despite his hectic schedule. The second book, Hank Wilson Volume 2, was released with a clear country flavor, showing that he had returned to his alter identity once again. The charismatic cowboy with a piano who straddled the honky-tonk and gospel genres was the Leon who had always captivated audiences. The bluesy album Solid State, which was recorded in Tennessee, came after it. Russell, as usual, was pursuing oral landscapes that defied categorization, fluidly shifting between musical styles. Because his tired spirit would not rest, Russell was back on the road by 1985. In the same year, he shared Best of Leon Russell, A Song for You, a reminiscence of his complicated and fascinating past. Russell, nevertheless, kept on pushing ahead even when he performed his biggest songs. Their performances captivated audiences throughout the United States and Canada as the years passed, and they even went on tour with Edgar Winter. The alliance that emerged between Winter's untamed fire and Russell's calm, soulful playing stood the test of time. By the 1990s, Russell had continued to create, but in a more subdued fashion. By reworking classic tunes, he gave new depth to familiar melodies. In 1991, he made a return with the aid of Bruce Hornsby and published Anything Can Happen. He didn't exactly go out of his way to promote it. Never one to seek attention, Leon was happy to let his music speak for itself. A more introspective Russell emerged in the mid-1990s. With the launch of his record company came the instrumental album Hymns of Christmas, which he said was an ode to his gospel upbringing. However, the past continued to trouble him even as he reflected on it. For the 1998 album Legend in My Time, Hank Wilson Volume 3, which bore the burden of years past and hopes faded, he brought Hank Wilson back to life again. The general public began to forget about Leon Russell in the 2000s, yet his music remained powerful for his fans. His enthusiasm shone through as he played with equal fervor in festivals, intimate venues, and massive platforms. The pursuit of music had replaced his pursuit of celebrity, but his health started to deteriorate over time. Russell had an abrupt change in his professional trajectory in the 2010s. His former opening act, Elton John, contacted him to propose a collaboration. In Russell's last years, their 2010 effort, The Union, shone as a ray of hope. The album earned Russell's 6th gold record, and he gave it his all while fighting sickness. That Leon Russell's heart could still hold music was a sign that the years had not erased it. Even though he had heart failure and had to undergo surgery, Russell continued performing right up until his last years, even though the stage started to seem heavier and the piano keys were somewhat harder to push. He continued touring despite the discomfort until, on November 13, 2016, the encore was announced. The death had occurred of Leon Russell. The Wrecking Crew were close friends of Leon Russell's. Therefore, Cher addresses Leon Russell's actions in this reunion interview. Leon Russell, she recalled, was an unassuming guy. In Cher's memory, Leon never once yelled out boo to anybody. She continued by saying, he'd just come in, play his piano, and that was it. She then related an episode when things went wrong, and Leon showed up to work wholly intoxicated. I mean, so drunk she was amazed. After that, he sat at the piano, and for once he was talking, which was a rare sight. Everyone was looking at him like, "Did you see Leon? Did you see him?" Cher said with a laugh. Leon was hilarious, but none of this was anticipated, says the main singer. Phil, the session leader, was prepared to bring everyone in under control as the laughter subsided, but that was just before the session began. The jaw-dropping moment occurred when Phil questioned Leon. "Leon, have you ever heard of the word respect?" Cher also recalled Phil's expression as he inquired. "Phil, have you ever heard of the word respect?" Leon yelled out from the piano as he continued to drink. Everybody went crazy. Crying with laughter, people were rolling around on the floor. They had to gather themselves for half an hour. It was a combination of delight and incredulity that Cher remembered. Later, trombonist Lou McCree recalled an earlier Leon, an Oklahoma country lad who, upon arriving in town, resided in a dilapidated hotel on Sunset Boulevard. Before he had a phone, he would just loiter about the studios, taking jobs when he came across them. Lou chimed in saying, "We told him, Leon, if you want to work in this town, you need a phone." Leon shook his head and smiled. But that was Leon, real country. Following him, Tommy Tedesco, guitarist for the Wrecking Crew, discussed an incident involving Leon's session with Glenn Campbell. There, Leon began to freak out because he felt completely out of place. Glenn remained composed and just instructed Leon, "Leon, play that stuff you did in Oklahoma. They don't know anything here." Leon dutifully complied. Everyone saw his own style, his playing, when he did things his own way, and it stayed with him ever since. The drummer, Hal Blaine, was awestruck by Leon's piano skills ever since. He possessed an enchanted quality, Hal remembered. The down-home Southern-style piano playing was absolutely stunning. Leon uttered few words, but his fingers spoke volumes. Larry Levine likewise found himself gushing over Leon. He recalled a session in which Leon and Al DeLore had played electric piano together, just filling the space. After that, Leon switched to acoustic, and Larry was astounded by the King's music. Leon had hands that could reach octaves. "You can't beat that," he said. Leon had something that couldn't be taught because music was in his bones, in every note he touched. Finally, Julius Retcher recalled an evening when Leon was greeted by an 80-piece orchestra. Even though the time was rapidly approaching 8 o'clock, Leon was unable to arrive. The door creaked open just as the tension was beginning to rise. As usual, Leon limped into the room and slowly made his way to the piano. Complete silence fell. Before he could start playing, Ben Barrett's harsh and abrupt voice echoed through the booth. "Leon, don't you ever be late again." Leon remained silent. He got to his feet, shut the piano, and hobbled out of the room without ever playing a note. The room became dead quiet as he departed. Something about Leon made him march to the rhythm of his drum, regardless of the consequences. Everyone in the band, even the other members, couldn't stop gushing over Leon Russell and his incredible life story. Even if the world may never see another icon like Leon, Don't you believe that a revitalized Leon Russell will grace the stage with his presence and ignite it? Feel free to subscribe to my channel and leave a comment with your opinion on the matter.